amazing event is Chris Izu Okafor, the COO of Patricia Technologies. Please, a round of applause for him.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be, giving a keynote speech, and I'll be talking strictly on Web3, Africa's future in the Web3 era. So I'll be basing my conversation a lot of times, right? Most people come with the idea of, these tech people, what's Web3? We have not finished solving hunger. People are hungry, there's poverty. But I like to understand that relatability is very important, especially, in Africa, especially with the society that we are. So it's important that I will try to make sure that I try to relate blockchain and Web3 to our realities as much as possible. I think it's important we tell our stories also from that direction so that we can have more adoption, right? Because that's the goal. The more people who are into DeFi, blockchain, the more it's better for the ecosystem, the more it's better for the communities. And the very important part is that we can use economic leverage that the blockchain gives us to get more people out of poverty, affect and impact our societies. So what's Web3? It's a buzzword. So yes, it's a buzzword. So what's Web3? People say Web3 is the future, blockchain is the future. Simply, it's basically the internet built on the blockchain, right? And although that's in its simplified form, what it tends to do is that it combines the power of the internet, the read and write internet like we know it, and puts it in a way that it can harness the advantages that blockchain gives us. Tokenomics is the currency in Web3, and also it's able to give us distributed and decentralized data that we are able to control, not the big tech companies, not the, you are in control of a lot of things that happen in Web3. The individual has so much power, and that's really important for the story that we're going to tell. Another thing, like I said, is the opportunities that Web3 gives us, the opportunities to move our societies from where we find it to a much more happier place, a much more place where people can relate to a lot of the work that we are doing. First off, I didn't introduce myself, so I'll come back to it. I'm Chris, and I work at Patricia. And the work we do at Patricia is cut off blockchain. We deal in cryptocurrency. And one of the messages we try to pass is how cryptocurrency can be used every day by everyday people. So what we've done in 2020, we released the first West African Bitcoin debit card, where you could, go to a club and pay with Bitcoin with your card. You could, buy stuff in the local marts with your Bitcoin debit card. We also have a product called Refill. With that, you could pay for subscriptions, pay for airtime, buy your airtime, all with Bitcoin. So that's one of the advantages that blockchain gives you. So back to Web3, right? What are the opportunities that Web3 gives us? What are the relatability that we can connect it to? Like I said, I'll be dealing more on the connection that we can get from Web3 so that it doesn't look like a foreign concept. So when I'm not working at Patricia, I'm running an MBA at the Lagos Business School, and I'm always, fighting with my colleagues. Web3, that's not what we are dealing with now. Are you not seeing what's happening? It's difficult to actually get them to understand the work that we are doing. So some of the questions that we'll be answering is what tokenization can solve, right? There's a question of SMEs today in Nigeria. A lot of people don't have access to capital. Talking about the capital markets, there was a conversation that I was a part of on Thursday, and a lot of people were saying, what's the capital market? How do I access? People in Alaba, how would they access capital? They don't know what capital markets are, right? How do we get that down to the regular people? And this solves it, right? Tokenization. it answers the question, and especially with the DAOs, and how people can pull funds together and actually use it. It's going to be the future of venture capital. It's going to be the future of funding, and it's important that we understand that we have to be able to drive the narrations around this type of concepts down to people. With the question of ICOs and protocols, decisions on business is going to be more direct, right? Governing protocols and all of that is going to help us understand decisions that are taken. You can't just make those calls on your own as if you maybe your government. People come together and decide to use funds, right? And it can be done in a way that it is managed by these things. Another of it is basically P2P is happening now, and that's because of some policies that have been put in place. And tokenization is something that brings that to the everyday life of people. So a lot of times, right, people say, these things, where do they even happen? Like I was discussing with a colleague and say, how do this transaction, what do people use, Bitcoin and blockchain for in Nigeria, if not, scams? And it was really funny because, and it was an opportunity to actually educate someone on how, blockchain can directly affect our lives. So I took him to someone in Alaba. So what this guy does, out of school, doesn't really, have a job, a direct job. So what he does is that he knows a lot of SMEs, right, that want to import stuff, and they can access dollars. They import secondhand clothes and all of that, and they can't access the dollar. They don't have these bank people to call. They don't even know how the process works because it's not clear. And what he does is that he takes their fiat, right? He takes their money. He does business through blockchain, that's crypto, connects to the buyers in China, does the payments for them, takes off commissions off it, brings these things in for them, and that keeps that community going. They're able to do business. SMEs are happy. And these are the direct ways that people don't know how these things affect us on a day-to-day, and it's important that these stories are told from that perspective also. Also, we're going to talk about how, with tokens, participants can also, like I said, direct governing functions. So DeFi gives us that ability to be able to make these connections. You have people with the same type of ideas. You're not going to have infiltrations because there are smart contracts there to direct the funds exactly where it's supposed to go to. And these are the stories that we should tell about how blockchain can actually change lots of things for us. We see what's happening with even our political process today, right? And I'm going to always try to drag us down to how these things affect us in reality, right? And you can almost just touch how our political process could be made better with a Web3 identity, with the wallet identity. It's almost like it's an opportunity that is just there and it's going to come. But we have to keep these things going. We have to keep this type of conversations going so that more people can get ideas on how we can leverage these opportunities. So NFTs, DAOs, DeFi, and the metaverse. These are concepts that are every day identified with Web3, the internet of the future, the blockchain internet. So what does Africa, where are we now in terms of these concepts? Where are we in NFTs? And the story has been so beautiful. Over the last year and a half, the NFT markets has done, billions of transactions. A lot of those transactions also, pass through Africa. And it's really amazing because, like I said, these are personal. I always like to drive personalized stories. So there's a popular NFT account on Twitter. She's a personal friend, and I think last year she was working at the customer care center, but she wasn't happy, because she was really good at art. And, she was like, these NFTs, how do I, mint my work and put it out there? Because I think that they are good, but, I'm not being priced. She does jobs and they're saying, let me give you 5K. And she knows that, these things are worth more. And the conversations, around that we had were, why not, try NFTs, mint these things? And she wanted to mint, and she saw, $160, $80. How much do they buy these things? And it was really beautiful because after she minted her work, started building her community, and eventually I think she sold out 3 times now. Yeah, she sold out 3 times now, and it's a really beautiful story because now she has left that job and she's a full-time NFT artist today. So these are the stories that economically moves directs us to see that how Africa can actually leverage these things. For we've evolved, right? And also value has evolved. So NFTs have come to even much more than that, create communities where people can, ascribe value. Before, ascribing value to these things had to do with people who call the shots, oh, this is great, this is what you should collect. But today we have content creators who are making so much out of NFTs because they're able to harness their communities, they're able to harness that value, and all the indigenous things that used to give value are now, put on blockchain. And this is really beautiful to see. More Africans need to own NFTs, and the adoption is great, but it could be better. So I just took data and looked at where the current adoption is, and Africa is doing so well. We could see that Nigeria is number three in terms of countries that are adopting NFTs, and even in terms of I think the research was done by Finder, and when they found out more Nigerians were more enthusiastic, about owning NFTs than any other country in the world, and it tells you how everyone wants to leverage. Nigerians are fantastic people. We are always happy to leverage on opportunities. And if these opportunities present themselves, we are actually going to take advantage of it. We're doing the work. A lot of NFT communities are budding, and you see these conversations happening, and you're happy because you know that this is where our future is. And the fact that a lot of young Nigerians are involved in this, it just brings so much joy to the ecosystem and to the country in general. So DAOs, right? DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. I've mentioned it before. What these solve for us is really immense because capital is a big problem. Access to capital is one of the biggest problems that we experience here in at this part of the world. We're an emerging economy, so it means that a lot of Nigerians are poor. But we can harness a lot of what we have on Web3 to be able to answer these questions, right? DAOs create the best practices for digital communication coordination, and that's a superpower in its own. Like I mentioned, they really excite me, right? DAOs, and some communities I've seen have been really, involved in, fantastic projects, leveraging across DAOs, NFTs, and it's really amazing to see. Protocols and governing structures, they create, exciting possibilities for the future of corporate governance. It's only normal that power comes to the people. And with DeFi and DAOs, we actually see that in reality. It's not just a concept anymore. It's what can actually be. Fluid work streams and smart contracts, they change how, tasks are delegated because we can see that protocols and governing structures, they can, determine what is going to happen when a particular thing is met, right? There's no need for a lot of arbitrary decisions are made by, politically. You know that when this happens, this fund is going to be released. When we want to invest in this particular, or I want my money to go to this particular startup, it is going to go to this particular startup. That's what DAOs give us, that ability to make sure that we are definitely using, our money or putting our monies where our mouth is. And this is happening today in Africa, and it's really exciting to see. A lot of countries in Africa have the fastest growing economies, right? And in terms of even to see how this plays out is in mobile money adoption. It's really immense that for an economy that is deemed emerging, that is deemed poor, we can have the highest adoption rate for the fastest adoption rate for mobile money, especially in Kenya, where M-Pesa holds true. This tells you how people can accept new technology if given the opportunity. And this tells you even the greater opportunities that we can leverage through DeFi. Although much of our finance is still controlled by central financial systems, but that's just a testament of what is to come. Recently, we saw the launch of CBDCs, and I always tell people that I am a bit happy that happened because it paints the picture that digital money is real. It may not be decentralized. They may try to centralize it, but it's a story that they themselves have to know that they cannot ignore for so long. and it's come to be, right? And with CBDCs, it presents the first, advantage for us here in Nigeria to see that it's only a matter of time before DeFi actually takes really amazing roots in what we do. With the introduction of blockchain technology, it's now possible because DeFi enables everyone to be their own bank with their own wallets. They could do P2P on an amazing level that takes out all of the intermediaries. And these are some of the conversations that would happen here today. And it's important that we are constantly telling these stories. So basically, the final thing at what the opportunities gives us, which I've tried to explain, especially when it comes to relatability, we have the opportunity to drive a narrative shift. We have the opportunity to do that. Although not all stories, are positive. There's no single side to stories that are being told. There's been, especially recently, we've seen what happened in the stablecoin space, which has generated lots and lots of conversations as to how much of these utilities and how much of these coins are actually what they are supposed to be. But people are people, right? And in the end, we must know that this is still very young in Africa. This is still very young in the world, and definitely is not going to be. There have been economic collapses because of and even as at now, Sri Lanka is a country that's upside down because of economic policies that their central government and central banks have made. So things like this are not going to evaporate because it's happening in blockchain or Web3. We must just continue to encourage ourselves that are doing the right work to understand that we have a responsibility to shift the narrative to not ensure that we engage in projects or protocols or even coins that are try to do harmful things to the ecosystem in terms of storytelling and actually affecting the ecosystem negatively. So you've heard stories of rug pulling across different projects. You have stories of coins that seem like they were shit coins and try to take people's money, but we must all try to hold ourselves accountable and be responsible, because the stories that are going to come out of this should be stories that we can use to leverage the adoption rate so that people can be much more comfortable and we can have much more investments in this space. Infrastructure. So a lot of Web3 maximalists, they don't like to hear Web2. But the future of Web3 is not just going to come on its own. It's not bad to leverage infrastructure. It's not bad to leverage Web2 infrastructure to actually build these things that are going to eventually change the way finance is done in Africa and even in the world. So we must not be afraid to leverage current infrastructures that we have. The technology is still new. We are still building. There's still mistakes that are going to happen. But there's just going to be much more positive stories like we've seen recently. We must also build communities, and that's where we are doing fantastically well. There's so much enriching and helpful communities across the Web3 space, the NFT communities, the DAOs, especially locally. And you see, sometimes I join these conversations on Twitter and you hear so much interesting ideas that people are trying to bring to life. And it's just amazing that we can do these things. We have to harness community as a means of education, as a means of connecting more people to the space of driving adoption. And telling stories like this is where Techpoint has come in, and they are doing really, really well in making sure that we are all here together to listen to conversations, to ask questions, to ensure that we are totally primed as to what Web3 can be or is for us right now. The last one, which we cannot overemphasize, is education. Like I said at the beginning of when I started talking, people are not entirely, like we have to understand the realities of where we are as a country and as a continent. We're an emerging economy, we're a poor continent by some standards, but we are trying to make sure that more people can adopt Web3. We are trying to make sure that we can pass these messages across, and if we cannot relate it to the direct problems that we have, if we cannot relate it to the everyday problems that we have, if our solutions are not speaking for, economic leverage for the average person, it's just going to be theory, and it's not going to make these conversations have actual impact. We're doing already amazingly well. There's so much positive stories from the NFT space as to, how it has made people even millionaires. It's really fantastic that you hear these things, and the value that these things have created. It's only important that we keep telling these stories. It's only important that we keep, having more people adopt Web3 and understand it as how it can affect their lives. Today, we're going to have much more conversations on Web3, on blockchain, and it's really amazing that these guys are doing it. And I hope that we're able to harness all the positivity here today, go out there, build, make change happen, and change the continent. Thank you very much.